My wife asked me to confess to financial abuse before she would let my attorney, a longtime family friend, finish the anniversary toast. Not to stealing her money, not to leaving her without food or a home, to making her feel that every dollar required my permission. Vanessa placed a statement beside my plate. "Read it," she said. "Then maybe we can handle the rest privately." 8 people watched. My father sat beside 2 company directors. Vanessa's mother had joined by video. My attorney held her champagne glass, her toast abandoned halfway through a sentence. The statement began, "I acknowledge that my need for control has caused my wife fear. I knew the trap. If I refused, Vanessa would call that proof. If I defended myself, I would become the man interrogating his frightened wife before witnesses." My father gave me a nod. "Take the blame. Protect the family." I picked up the statement. "Don't read that." Claire Bennett stood behind me. Vanessa's best friend placed a brass key on top of the confession. Vanessa's face changed. "You promised." Claire flinched. "I promised to help you leave. I didn't promise to help you frame him." She turned to me. "Before you read that," she said, "ask her who paid for the apartment. The apartment deposit came from a credit line opened in your name. Vanessa told me you approved it. I never approved a credit line. I know that now." Claire's voice shook. "I kept the spare key. I drove her there. When you called, I lied." Vanessa pushed back her chair. "She was afraid of him. I was protecting her." "No," Claire said. "You said you needed somewhere private until the divorce papers were ready. You never said the application was in his name." She slid the key toward my attorney. "I helped her hide the apartment. If you want the whole truth, mine has to be in it too." Claire faced Vanessa. "Tell him why the bank called you back. They asked me to upload it again because the first signature didn't match. Nobody had said the signature failed to match. And Vanessa had just admitted she knew it did." Vanessa's mother leaned toward the camera. "What did you submit?" "A routine authorization," Vanessa said. "Ethan handles our finances. He sends me forms all the time, not credit applications." I set the statement down without signing it. Her eyes followed my hand. For 9 years, I had ended arguments by accepting enough blame to restore the peace. She was waiting for that version of me. My attorney, Margaret Sloan, reached for the key. "Do you have the lease?" Margaret asked. "A photograph of the first page and the payment confirmation." Vanessa kept the original. "Because it's my apartment," Vanessa said. Peter Lawson, one of the directors, studied the unsigned confession. "Paid through Ethan's credit?" he asked. "Our credit?" Vanessa corrected. "The account is in his name," Claire said. Vanessa gave a short laugh. "You've always been careless with context." Claire's shoulders drew inward, but she stayed beside my chair. Margaret turned the white tag toward the light. "The address belonged to a building on Waverly Avenue, less than 10 minutes from our house. Vanessa had once called that building sterile and overpriced." "How long?" I asked. Vanessa folded her napkin once, then again. "This isn't the conversation we're having. How long have you had the apartment?" "Listen to yourself." She looked around the table, inviting the others to hear the danger in an ordinary question. "Claire arrives with stolen information, and you immediately start interrogating me." I wanted to soften the question and apologize for asking it publicly. My thumb pressed against the edge of the prepared statement instead. "I'm asking about a debt opened in my name." Vanessa's expression held, but her folded napkin tore beneath one fingernail. My father cleared his throat. "Ethan, perhaps we should pause until we know what's authentic. That statement has been in front of me for 6 minutes, and nobody asked whether it was authentic." He leaned back. On the laptop, Marjorie called Vanessa's name. Vanessa muted the screen without answering her mother. Margaret held out her palm toward Claire. "Show me what you have." Claire unlocked her phone. A photograph of a lease appeared, tilted at one corner. Vanessa Mercer was listed as the tenant. Claire Bennett was the emergency contact. The deposit line showed a payment of $18,000 from Mercer Design Holdings, my company. "Why is the company named on a residential lease?" "It isn't company money," Vanessa said. "The lender used his business profile to establish eligibility." Margaret stopped enlarging the image. "How do you know what profile the lender used?" Vanessa glanced at Claire. "Because she told me." Claire's phone remained in Margaret's hand. "I didn't know until yesterday." "You're lying." "I already admitted where I lied." Margaret scrolled to the payment confirmation. The borrower is Ethan Mercer. The notice went to an email ending in V. Mercer. That address belonged to Vanessa's private consulting account. I reached for the brass key. It was cold, with one shallow scratch near the teeth. An ordinary object that had opened a life I knew nothing about. Does Owen Price know about this? I asked. Vanessa's head lifted, Claire's lips parted, but no answer came. Owen had refinanced our workshop. He had access to my company records and electronic signature. Vanessa recovered quickly. Why would Owen know anything about my apartment? I didn't say he did. Peter took the phone from Margaret and examined the lender's logo. Price Advisory arranged our equipment line with the same institution. My father's face tightened. The problem had crossed into the company. Vanessa saw the change too. Ethan approved everything, she said. Maybe he doesn't remember. Because he signs whatever his office puts in front of him. Then let Margaret verify it. Tonight? You wanted my confession tonight. Her chair scraped the floor as she stood. I wanted accountability. So do I. Claire stepped away from me, creating space rather than claiming a place at my side. There's something else in the apartment. Vanessa turned on her. Stop. Claire swallowed. A file box. Gray, with a blue lid. She told me it contained divorce papers. It does. Then why did you tell me never to touch it? Vanessa reached for her purse. Margaret moved it away before she could take it. Until I understand whether company information was used, Margaret said. No one deletes, removes, or alters anything related to that apartment. My father stared at the key in my hand. We should send counsel. No, I said. I placed the confession in front of Margaret and folded it along the unsigned line. Vanessa asked me to admit I made her afraid. Claire says she helped hide a place Vanessa planned to leave to. I need to see which story that apartment was built to support. Vanessa's composure slipped for less than a second. You can't go in there. I raised the key between us. Why not? Her answer took too long. Claire looked at the floor. Margaret began photographing the statement. Because, she said finally, if you open that door, you won't be able to pretend you didn't know. I slipped the key into my pocket. Know what? Vanessa did not answer, but Claire did. That, the apartment wasn't only for leaving you. Margaret would not let any of us leave for Waverly Avenue until she had photographed the statement, the key, and every image on Claire's phone. Vanessa used those 12 minutes well. She stood at the far end of the dining room with her mother still muted on the laptop and spoke softly enough to appear reasonable. He's taking this because Claire knows exactly how to provoke him. Peter stopped beside the doorway. A residential lease has our company's name on it because Ethan mixes business and personal finances whenever it suits him. My father turned toward me. The question in his face was familiar. Could I make this easier for everyone? I had spent most of my life answering yes. When I was 14, my mother left after shattering a serving bowl against the kitchen wall. My father made me help clean it before he called her. I remembered kneeling beside him while he chose the words that might bring her home. We are sorry things became difficult. Not she threw the bowl. Not she left. We are sorry. She returned 3 days later. I learned that peace belonged to whoever accepted the most blame. Vanessa had not invented that weakness. She had simply learned how to use it. No one contacts the lender tonight, Margaret said. No one warns Mr. Price. Ethan, you and I will visit the apartment. Claire may come because her name is on the lease. Vanessa should remain here. You're excluding me from my own property, Vanessa said. I'm preventing 4 people from contaminating potential evidence. I'm not staying in a house where my husband is being encouraged to investigate me. Margaret heard it too. Where will you stay? Somewhere safe. Vanessa looked directly at Peter as she said it. He lowered his eyes. Outside, the rain had thinned to a cold mist. Margaret drove because she did not want me holding the key until we reached the building. Claire sat in the back seat, with both hands around her phone. Nobody spoke for the first 5 blocks. At a red light, Claire's exhausted face appeared in the windshield. When did you last enter the apartment? Margaret asked. 6 days ago. Why? Vanessa asked me to bring a garment bag. What was in it? Clothes, I think. I didn't open it. And the file box? It was already there. Margaret tapped one finger against the steering wheel. You understand that withholding details now will damage Ethan as much as anything Vanessa has done. Claire's phone case creaked beneath her grip. Yes, I waited for more. Nothing came. Claire had always noticed an empty glass before anyone asked for water. For years, I had mistaken attention for honesty. Why tonight? I asked. I saw the statement this afternoon, Claire said. Vanessa sent it to me and asked whether it sounded believable. Margaret checked the mirror. Do you still have the message? Yes. That is not an answer to Ethan's question. Claire drew a slow breath. Until today, I thought she was building a way out. I didn't know she was building a case against him. You heard her call me controlling? I did. You lied when I called looking for her. Yes. The building on Waverly Avenue had a glass lobby and a brass directory polished brighter than the key in Margaret's pocket. A security camera tracked us as we crossed the tile. The night manager looked up from his desk. Can I help you? Margaret showed her identification and explained that the named tenant had authorized Claire as an emergency contact. Andrew studied the lease photograph. Then Claire. Miss Mercer said the spare was for medical emergencies. This concerns suspected identity fraud, Margaret said. We need to preserve the unit and confirm whether the key works. His posture changed at the word fraud. I'll need to call the tenant. Do not alert her before we determine whether records have been altered. Andrew looked past Margaret at me. Are you Mr. Mercer? Yes. His eyebrows lifted, then drew together. Wait here. Claire moved toward a row of gray chairs but did not sit. I stayed near the directory, where the apartment numbers were arranged in perfect columns. You don't have to believe me tonight, she said. That's convenient. She accepted the words without defending herself. I thought helping her leave quietly would prevent something uglier. You helped her create somewhere to go. Then you helped her make me look like the reason she needed it. I know. Do you? Her hand rose toward her collarbone, then dropped. Not enough. Not when it mattered. Andrew returned with a tablet and another man wearing a security jacket. The tenant profile has a privacy restriction, he said. Margaret pointed to Claire's name on the document. She has a key and is listed as the emergency contact. The restriction was added yesterday. By whom? The tenant. I could feel the scene arranging itself around Vanessa's version of me. The angry husband, the frightened wife, the secret apartment, the attorney forcing access. One raised voice would complete the picture. Instead, I removed my hands from my coat pockets and kept them visible. Can you preserve the access logs and camera footage? I asked. Andrew hesitated. You'll have one by morning, Margaret said. Claire pointed toward a narrow table near the elevators. A courier envelope rested beneath a stack of restaurant menus. That's hers. The label showed Vanessa's name and the apartment number. It was delivered this evening, he said. Document service. Margaret photographed the label. The sender was the same lender shown on the payment confirmation. Can you place it in the unit without opening it? She asked. Andrew nodded. Security can escort Miss Bennett upstairs. The rest of you stay here. Claire took the brass key from Margaret. Before entering the elevator, she turned toward me. There may be things in there you won't understand yet. That sounds like something Vanessa would say. Pain crossed her face, but the doors closed before she answered. Margaret asked me to list every time Vanessa had accused me of restricting money. The frozen card came first. 6 months earlier, our bank flagged purchases in 3 cities. I froze Vanessa's card and transferred money to another account so she would not be stranded. By dinner, the story had changed. I had embarrassed her in front of a client by turning off her money. I apologized for the timing. Later, she asked me to handle the household bills. During an argument, that request became proof that I controlled every account. I apologized for making the system feel unequal. Margaret stopped typing. Did you keep those messages? Probably. Probably is how reasonable people lose to organized ones. The elevator opened. Claire stepped out without the key. Security sealed the unit, she said. The gray box isn't where Vanessa kept it. Margaret closed her laptop. Was anything else disturbed? The desk drawers were open. The closet was half empty. There was a framed photograph face down on the kitchen counter. A photograph of whom? Claire's gaze settled on me. Ethan and Vanessa. From their wedding, Andrew came from the service corridor holding an access report. Someone entered the unit at 7:42 tonight, he said. Our anniversary toast had begun at 7:30. Margaret asked, whose credential? Andrew studied the screen, then looked at me with open confusion. Mr. Price's. The name struck harder because it was not Owen's. Which Mr. Price? Andrew turned the tablet so we could see the registered occupant. Daniel Price. He paused. Andrew enlarged the occupant profile on his tablet. Daniel Price was dark-haired, with a jaw close enough to mine to explain Andrew's mistake. I recognized the suit. Owen Price had worn it to our workshop refinancing meeting. That isn't Daniel, I said. Margaret took the tablet. You know him? His name is Owen Price. Andrew checked the registration form. The identification was verified online. Margaret handed him a business card. Preserve everything associated with this profile. Andrew nodded and entered a note into the system. Claire remained near the elevator. Vanessa called him Daniel. When? I asked. About a month ago. We were moving the desk into the apartment. A man called, and she said, Daniel, not now. I assumed he was someone from the building. You heard his voice? Only enough to know it was a man. Margaret closed her laptop. No more assumptions tonight. We document what we know and separate it from what we think. At 12:18 a.m., Margaret obtained an emergency preservation order. Andrew sealed the brass key in an evidence envelope. I watched the object disappear beneath clear tape. 6 hours earlier, it had been ordinary metal beside my anniversary plate. Now, it required a chain of custody. Before leaving, Claire forwarded Margaret the message Vanessa had sent with the confession. Does this sound believable enough that he won't fight it? The timestamp was 3:06 that afternoon. Claire's reply contained only 4 words. What are you doing? It helped her. It did not absolve her. Margaret drove me to the workshop because I refused to return home. The upstairs office had a narrow sofa for employees working late. Before leaving, Margaret placed a legal pad on my desk. Write down what happened while you still remember the order. I remember every word. Trauma is confident. Memory is not. She took my company laptop with her for forensic review. By 7, I had written 11 pages and crossed out every apology. Apologies were not facts. Margaret returned with Marcus Cho, a litigation attorney who handled fraud and employment disputes. He spread 3 documents across the conference table: the lease photograph, the payment confirmation, and an electronic authorization obtained from the lender that morning. The signature looked like mine. It ended with the abbreviated stroke I used on vendor approvals. That came from our document system, I said. Marcus pointed to a code beneath it. The image was copied from a certificate you signed during the workshop refinancing. Owen arranged that loan. And the authorization was uploaded from a tablet registered to Vanessa's consulting firm. The lender rejected it because the signature image lacked the encryption data attached to the original, the failed verification Vanessa had mentioned. Margaret placed another page beside it. A second application was submitted 23 minutes later. This one used a different signature. The second version was clumsy. Someone had tried to imitate me after copying me failed. The lender approved that? Provisionally, Marcus said. Owen Price vouched for the application and connected it to your business credit profile. He claimed you were traveling and had authorized Vanessa to complete the paperwork. I pressed both palms against the table. How much? The current balance is $46,000. The approved limit is $250,000. The $250,000 was not enough to destroy Mercer Design Holdings. It was enough to frighten our bank, freeze a contract, or make our directors wonder what else I had signed without remembering. Can we close it? Not without triggering a fraud review, Marcus said. That review may reach every facility Owen arranged for your company. Proving I had not opened one account could make the bank question every legitimate account supporting 83 employees. Margaret's phone vibrated. She read the message and slid it across the table. The building had released a still image from the previous night's security footage. At 7:42, Owen Price had entered the apartment wearing a baseball cap and carrying the gray file box. At 7:49, he had left without it. He put it back? I asked. Or replaced it with something. The judge expanded the order before noon. Margaret, Marcus, a building representative, and I entered the apartment. Claire waited in the lobby. Vanessa's shoes stood beneath a bench. Her favorite tea filled one cabinet. A coat I had bought her hung beside a man's charcoal jacket. Margaret photographed everything before we touched it. The gray box sat beneath the desk. Its blue lid was secured with 2 strips of fresh tape. Marcus cut the tape, while the building representative recorded him. Inside were bank statements. printed emails, copies of company reports, and a draft petition for divorce. The petition accused me of restricting Vanessa's money, monitoring her movements, and concealing marital assets. Attached to it was a timeline. The first entry was dated 9 months earlier. Ethan assumes sole control of household payments despite Vanessa's objections. 9 months earlier, Vanessa had sent me a text from an airport lounge. "Can you take over the bills? I can't keep holding all these numbers in my head." I found the message on my phone in less than a minute. The next entry described the frozen credit card but omitted the fraud alert and the transfer I made to keep her account funded. Every entry contained something I had done. Every reason had been removed. Vanessa had not created a lie from nothing. She had edited our marriage until kindness looked like control. "There's no correspondence with Owen," Margaret said. Marcus lifted the final folder. "There is something else." Inside were photographs of the apartment taken before Vanessa moved in. One showed the second bedroom arranged as an office. A walnut desk beneath the window, open shelves, a cream chair, and a green reading lamp. The desk was one I had designed for her 3 years earlier. Vanessa had rejected it before I finished the drawings. She said a home office would make her feel trapped inside my life. She accused me of deciding what kind of work she should do and where she should do it. I abandoned the design and apologized for not asking what she wanted. Now the desk existed. Owen's firm had paid my workshop to build it through an account labeled D. Price Consulting. My fingertips bent the photograph. She had wanted the room. She had simply needed the story to say I would never let her have it. Margaret touched the corner of the photograph. "Ethan, we need to bag that." I released it. Near the bottom of the box, Marcus found a printed email from Owen to Vanessa. The subject line read, "Narrative support." The message listed phrases to use consistently: restricted access, financial fear, unpredictable monitoring. Beneath them was a warning. "Do not mention the business credit line until Ethan denies controlling the accounts. His denial will make the disclosure more effective." The email had been sent 4 days before our anniversary. Vanessa's prepared confession had never been an attempt to resolve our marriage. It was the first exhibit in a case she expected me to help her build. Marcus turned to the last page. "This was printed yesterday, but the email chain is older." "How much older?" "The first message is dated 11 months ago. That was 2 months before Vanessa asked me to take over the bills." Margaret began reading the earlier exchange. Her expression changed. "What?" I asked. She placed the page on the desk between us. Owen's first message contained only one sentence. "If we want him to behave like the man in the petition, we have to teach everyone to see him that way before he knows there is a petition." By Thursday morning, the phrase "financially abusive" had reached the board before any of our evidence did. Vanessa's attorney sent a letter at 8:04. 27 minutes later, my access card stopped opening the executive entrance. I stood outside the glass doors while employees crossed the lobby behind me. Some waved. Others pretended not to see. My father came down instead of sending security. He unlocked the door but kept his body between me and the elevator. "The directors agreed to hear both sides," he said. "There aren't two sides to a forged signature. There are allegations involving company funds and your conduct toward Vanessa." The sentence sounded borrowed. My father adjusted his cuff. "Please, don't make this harder." Margaret arrived carrying 2 document cases. Marcus Cho followed with a laptop and a formal preservation notice for the company servers. Claire waited near the revolving doors, holding a paper cup she had not touched. The meeting took place in the presentation room on the 6th floor. 12 people sat around the long table. 4 directors, our chief financial officer, the head of human resources, 2 outside attorneys, my father, Vanessa, Claire, and me. Marjorie joined by video. Owen's chair remained empty. Vanessa wore the blue coat from the apartment. The hidden apartment had entered my workplace with her. Peter opened the meeting. "This is not a trial. We're here to determine whether Ethan should retain authority while the company reviews potential financial exposure." Vanessa's attorney placed a folder before every director. The first page was my unsigned confession. The second page contained screenshots of messages I had sent during the previous year. "Where are you? Call me when you receive this. The card is frozen. Use the household account until I fix it. Do not authorize anything else through Owen until I review it." Each sentence stood alone, stripped of the events that had produced it. Vanessa rested both hands on the table. "I didn't plan to discuss my marriage in this setting. But Ethan's need for control has entered the company. I have lived with financial monitoring for years. When I tried to create a separate place to work and prepare for divorce, he used corporate investigators and attorneys to enter it. Margaret spoke before I could. A court-authorized preservation after evidence of identity fraud. Vanessa's attorney lifted one palm. You'll have an opportunity. Vanessa turned toward the directors. Ethan is financially abusive. He controls access, punishes disagreement, and then uses his calm voice to make resistance sound irrational. The word abusive settled over the table. Marjorie covered her mouth on the screen. The head of human resources began taking notes. Vanessa opened a second folder. Claire knew I was afraid. She helped me secure the apartment because I needed somewhere he couldn't monitor. Claire's chair moved sharply against the floor. That isn't what you told me. You drove me there. You carried my clothes. You accepted the spare key. You said the application had been approved by Ethan, because I knew you would help if you believed he was involved. Claire leaned forward. She sent me the confession and asked whether it sounded believable after you decided to take his side. Vanessa's attorney displayed a photograph on the wall screen. Claire and I stood outside the workshop early Tuesday morning. Her hand was on my arm. My face was turned toward hers. Claire had steadied me after I learned the size of the credit line. The photograph preserved the touch and removed the distance. Vanessa did not look at me. How long have you been involved with my husband? Claire's face drained of color. We haven't been involved. You expect everyone to believe you betrayed your closest friend out of sudden concern for a man you barely knew? There was no safe answer. Any explanation could be recast as intimacy or motive. Claire closed her mouth. Her silence became Vanessa's evidence. Peter turned to me. Did you have any romantic or physical relationship with Miss Bennett before the anniversary dinner? No. After it? No. Marcus connected his laptop to the screen. Then, let's examine the larger one. He displayed the two signature authorizations, the lender metadata, and the still image of Owen entering the apartment under the name Daniel Price. Vanessa's attorney asked, Mr. Mercer, did you freeze your wife's credit card without first obtaining her permission? After the bank flagged fraudulent transactions, yes or no? Yes. Did you control the account into which she was told to transfer household funds? She asked me to manage it. Did you instruct her not to approve financial documents without your review? After I discovered inconsistencies involving Owen, again, yes. 3 truthful answers became a pattern when arranged correctly. Vanessa slid the prepared statement across the table. I'm not asking him to admit every detail of my experience. I'm asking him to acknowledge that his behavior created fear. My father touched the paper and pushed it toward me. A limited statement could protect the company while the review continues. Margaret whispered, Don't. Across the table, Claire remained trapped beneath the photograph on the screen. Vanessa had made her testimony look like betrayal, motivated by an affair. The directors were no longer evaluating a forged signature. They were deciding which woman had lied for me. I read the opening line again. I acknowledge that my need for control has caused my wife fear. Accept the feeling. Correct the facts later. Save the company and my father from embarrassment. My fingers closed around the pen. Vanessa's shoulders loosened. That small movement stopped me. She was relieved because I was about to provide the missing document. I set the pen beside the statement. I froze a compromised card. I managed bills Vanessa asked me to manage. I questioned documents prepared by a consultant who used a false identity. I will answer for anything I actually did. I won't sign her conclusion for her. The human resources director stopped writing. My father's jaw tightened. Ethan, this is not only about you. That is why I won't put a false admission into the company record. This is what happens in private, Vanessa said. He turns every feeling into a debate he has to win. Claire pushed her chair back. Then tell them about the email from Owen. Vanessa's attorney was ready. Miss Bennett, before you answer further, the board should know that my client intends to seek a protective order naming both you and Mr. Mercer. Any coordinated contact may become relevant. Claire froze. If she spoke, she risked making the photograph look like the beginning of a conspiracy. Enough, Peter said. The board has documents from both sides and an unresolved fraud inquiry. We also have allegations that could expose the company if Ethan continues exercising authority. Expose it to what? I asked. The head of human resources answered. Retaliation, misuse of records, coercion, and a hostile environment if marital conduct crossed into company operations. Peter asked everyone except the directors, counsel, and my father to leave. We waited in the corridor beneath framed photographs of furniture I had designed. Margaret instructed Claire and me not to speak, while the threat remained active. Vanessa walked past me toward the elevator. "You could have ended this at dinner," she said, "by confessing, by caring what your refusal would cost." Before entering the elevator, Vanessa glanced at Claire. "He'll blame you when the company chooses him over the truth." The doors closed. 23 minutes later, Peter called me back inside. My access card lay in the center of the table. My father picked it up. "Until the independent review is complete, you are suspended from all executive duties and access to company systems." "On what finding?" "It isn't a finding. It's protection." He removed the brass office key from my ring, the one he had given me when I became a partner, and placed the rest of the keys in my palm. They made no finding. They simply took away the place from which I could defend myself. Through the glass wall, employees watched my father escort me to the elevator. The cut on my palm began bleeding in the elevator. I had carried the remaining keys too tightly after my father removed the one to my office. Margaret noticed first. "Marcus and I need to answer the protective order threat," she said. "Go to the workshop apartment." "I don't have access to the workshop." She held up a silver service key. Claire stood near the entrance, soaked from the rain. Margaret gave her the key instead of me. "Make sure he eats." "I don't need." "That sentence has caused enough trouble today," Margaret said. The workshop apartment was one room above the finishing area, furnished with rejected cabinet samples. Every surface carried some mistake we had decided was still useful. Claire unlocked the door and set the key on the counter. She did not ask whether she should stay. She opened a drawer, found the first aid kit, and placed it beside the sink. "Your hand." "It's nothing." "Then cleaning it won't be difficult." I held my palm beneath the faucet. The water turned pink and disappeared around the drain. Claire tore open a packet of antiseptic but handed it to me rather than touching the wound. That small choice mattered. She heated a bowl of soup left in the freezer and placed it on the table with 2 slices of bread. My phone vibrated before I sat down. "Vanessa, you let your mistress humiliate me in front of my mother. Sign the statement tonight, and I will ask the board to reconsider." Claire saw her name on the screen but did not reach for the phone. Margaret said not to answer. Margaret isn't the one who lost her office. Neither am I. The word stopped me. Claire pulled out the other chair but remained standing. "You lost something today because I helped Vanessa create the evidence she used against you. I don't get to manage how you react to that." I turned the phone face down. "Sit," I said. She did, leaving the width of the table between us. I lifted the spoon. Then, set it down. I thought if I stayed calm long enough, the facts would eventually become obvious. Claire waited. If I didn't raise my voice, nobody could call me cruel. My bandaged hand rested beside the bowl, but I also liked being the reasonable one. It meant I never had to risk saying what I wanted while someone could still refuse me. Claire's expression tightened, not with pity, but recognition. "What did you want? For my wife to admit she knew what she was doing?" The answer sounded smaller after everything she had done. I tried again. "I wanted someone to believe me before I had a file box full of proof." Claire lowered her eyes. Rain tapped the metal window frame. "I believed parts of what Vanessa said," Claire said. "I know. No. You know I helped with the apartment. You don't know why I kept helping." She reached into her bag and removed a folded printout. "Margaret has a copy. I gave it to her after the meeting." The email was dated 7 months earlier. Vanessa had written to Claire after the credit card incident. Ethan froze the card because of a fraud alert. He moved money before I even asked. "Please don't repeat what I said last night. I was angry, and financial punishment sounded worse than what happened." Below it was Claire's response. "You need to stop telling people things you know aren't true." I checked the date. 7 months. "You had this the entire time." "Yes." "And I lied, Vine. At dinner?" "Yes." The bandage tightened as my hand closed. "At the board meeting? On my phone? Why didn't you give it to Margaret before Vanessa showed those messages?" Claire folded her hands in her lap. "Because the rest of the chain makes me look worse." "Show me." She unlocked her phone and opened the original thread. After Claire warned her, Vanessa had replied, "You have always wanted to believe Ethan was better than me." Claire's answer appeared beneath it. "Sometimes I do." The refrigerator stopped. Claire did not fill the quiet. "What did you mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like. Vanessa could walk into a room, hurt someone, Part of me wanted her marriage to fail because I wanted one thing in her life to prove she couldn't keep treating people that way. So you were waiting for me to become proof? Yes. The honesty landed harder than an excuse. Did you want me? Claire's breathing changed. Not in the way Vanessa is claiming. That isn't an answer. She carried her untouched soup to the sink. I noticed you, she said. I noticed that you remembered how I took my coffee. I noticed that you never joined in when Vanessa mocked people after parties. I noticed what it felt like when you asked my opinion and waited for the answer. She faced the dark window, and I used those feelings to excuse my silence. I told myself I couldn't interfere because anything I said would look personal. The truth is, staying out of it protected me. I kept Vanessa as my friend, kept your good opinion, and never had to choose what kind of person I was. I placed the email beside the prepared confession Margaret had returned to me. One document asked me to admit a lie. The other had been hidden because its truth embarrassed Claire. You let me walk into that dinner. Yes, you knew she had prepared something. I knew about the statement that afternoon. I didn't know who would be there until I reached the house. But you waited. Claire turned around. For 11 minutes in my car. Why? Because if I entered, I would lose her. And if I stayed outside, you might sign it. So you waited to see which loss frightened you more. Her eyes filled. But she did not wipe them. Yes. You should go. Claire nodded and reached for her coat. At the door, she paused beside the service key. Keep it. Margaret will need to know you have somewhere to sleep. I don't want another key from someone who decided what I should know. She recoiled as if I had raised my hand. Claire. She stopped but did not turn. I meant the boundary, not the cruelty. Her shoulders lowered a fraction. Accepted, she said. Not erased. She placed the key on the counter. When she faced me again, the distance between us felt smaller. I noticed the rain in her hair and the antiseptic on my skin. Wanting to reach for her did not feel like forgiveness. It felt like another way to avoid being alone. Not tonight, I said. Claire's gaze held mine. I wasn't asking. I know. I'm telling myself. The edge in her expression softened, then returned. Good. I picked up the hidden email. If anything ever happens between us, it can't start in the wreckage she made, and it can't depend on you forgetting what I did. I won't. Then we understand each other. Claire opened the door. Margaret has every message now, she said, including the ones that make me look guilty. You are guilty. She met the sentence without flinching. Yes. After she left, I locked the door with the service key and ate the cold soup. My phone vibrated again. This time, the message came from the bank. All Mercer Design Holdings credit facilities had been placed under immediate review. The bank froze our operating line at 9 the next morning. Payroll was due in 4 days. Mercer Design Holdings had enough cash to pay 83 employees once. After that, every invoice, timber order, and insurance premium depended on credit facilities Owen Price had helped arrange. I learned this from Marcus because I was no longer allowed to open the company dashboard. He placed his laptop on the small table in the workshop apartment and rotated the screen toward me. The bank isn't accusing you of fraud, he said. It is reviewing whether your identity and company records were compromised. That distinction won't matter to employees if their checks fail. Your father is negotiating a temporary facility. Using what collateral? Marcus closed the spreadsheet. The answer was the workshop. My grandfather had bought the original building when the neighborhood still smelled of machine oil. My father expanded it. I had spent 19 years turning it from a cabinet shop into a design company people crossed state lines to hire. Now the bank wanted it as reassurance that I had not endangered it. Margaret arrived with 2 overnight bags from my house. A process server had delivered Vanessa's petition that morning, along with a request granting her temporary possession of the marital home. She claims returning there would make her unsafe, Margaret said. Has she returned? Last night, with her attorney and a private security officer. Vanessa could sleep in our bedroom while telling a court she needed protection from a man living above his workshop. Margaret removed a folder from the larger bag. She also requested temporary control of the household accounts. She used my identity to open credit, and she says you'll drain the accounts to punish her for leaving. I opened my banking app. The balance appeared, but every transfer option had been disabled. My debit card failed 10 minutes later when I tried to pay for coffee downstairs. The cashier was 22 and had worked for us since high school. She pretended not to notice the decline then pushed the cup toward me. The machine does that sometimes. It had never done that before. I left the coffee on the counter. By noon, my father called a meeting in the finishing area because I was barred from the executive floor. He brought Peter, our chief financial officer, and 2 production managers. Nobody sat. The board will authorize payroll if you personally guarantee the temporary loan, my father said. The workshop is already the collateral. The bank wants additional security. Peter opened a valuation report. My shares. If the fraud review damaged the company and the temporary loan failed, I could lose both my ownership and the building. What happens if I refuse? One production manager stared at the concrete floor. My father answered, "We reduce shifts tomorrow." Vanessa had selected her timing well. The account did not need to bankrupt us. It only needed to make protecting myself look selfish. The signature line waited at the bottom of the guarantee. This time, the document described the actual cost. I signed it. My father collected the pages without thanking me. The board will view this as cooperation. It's payroll. Everything you do now will be viewed as something. He left with the others. The truth had not made me free. It had simply allowed me to choose which consequences belonged to me. Margaret objected when I said I needed independent money for legal fees. The joint accounts might remain restricted for weeks, and the company could not pay for a marital dispute. The only asset entirely mine was a restored 1,967 Triumph motorcycle stored behind the workshop. My mother had given it to me before she died. We spent one summer rebuilding the engine together after she finally left my father for good. Selling it felt less like losing transportation than surrendering the one object connected to a version of her who had stopped apologizing. The buyer arrived that afternoon with a trailer. He ran his hand along the fuel tank. "You sure?" "No. That usually means wait. Waiting is expensive." He transferred the money to Margaret's client account because mine could not receive it without review. When the trailer pulled away, a clean rectangle remained in the dust. I stood over that empty space until my phone rang. Claire's name appeared. I let it ring twice before answering. "Margaret said you sold the Triumph." "Margaret talks too much. She wanted me to know why you won't accept help." I didn't ask her to explain me. Claire absorbed the edge without retreating. "Then explain yourself." Through the open loading door, the motorcycle disappeared at the end of the street. "I won't owe my next place to you. I offered you a guest room, not ownership. Vanessa would call it proof. Is that the only reason?" It wasn't. Claire's house would have warm food, clean sheets, and someone who understood why a declined card could feel like a public verdict. I wanted all of it too much. If I move from Vanessa's house into yours, I make you shelter before I know whether I trust you. Claire took a breath. "All right, and I'm not leaving my marriage because you stayed. I know. I'm leaving because Vanessa forged my name and tried to make my response part of her evidence. I know that too." There was no argument in her voice, which made the boundary harder rather than easier. "Margaret says the workshop apartment violates the insurance policy if someone uses it as a residence?" Claire said. "She really does talk too much. I found a furnished room above a bookstore, month to month." "That is still help." "Yes. Help is not the same as deciding for you." She gave me the owner's number and ended the call before I could turn gratitude into permission for something else. The room above the bookstore had one window, a sloping ceiling, and a radiator that knocked every few minutes. The landlord asked for cash because my accounts were under review. After paying the deposit, I had $43 in my wallet. I carried both overnight bags upstairs myself. One contained clothes. The other contained objects Vanessa's attorney had selected: medication, tax records, my grandfather's watch, and the framed photograph from our wedding that had been face down in the apartment. I set the photograph inside a drawer without examining it. My phone displayed 17 missed calls. 6 came from employees. 4 came from vendors. My father had called twice. Vanessa had sent one message: "You are choosing Claire over your family, your home?" My thumb hovered above the reply field. I typed, "I am not with Claire." Then, "I never controlled you." Then, "You did this." Each sentence invited her to answer, rearrange, and preserve it. I deleted all 3. Instead, I forwarded the message to Margaret and wrote only, "For the record." The radiator struck twice behind the wall. Someone knocked downstairs. A minute later, the landlord called up that a courier had brought legal documents. The envelope contained notice that Vanessa had used $42,000 from our joint investment account to pay her attorney's retainer and personal security expenses before the accounts were restricted. Attached was the transaction history. The first transfer had occurred 3 weeks before our anniversary. The second went to Price Advisory. The memo line read, "Narrative and exit planning." The first person to call me dangerous was a man who had known me for 22 years. Mark Delaney and I had shared a college apartment and stood beside each other at our weddings. On Friday morning, he posted a statement beneath a photograph of Vanessa and me at his lake house. "I believe women when they say they are afraid. Silence protects the person with power." He did not need to use my name. By noon, 3 clients had postponed projects and someone had painted "Believe her" across the workshop loading door. My father sent me a photograph but no message. I called Mark. He answered on the 6th ring, "You shouldn't contact me. You could have asked me what happened." Vanessa showed us the messages. "Did she show you the fraud alerts? This is exactly what she said you'd do. Turn everything into documents until nobody is allowed to talk about how you made them feel." The sentence was too polished to belong to him. "Who is us?" He exhaled. "People who care about both of you." Claire too? Claire chose her side. "You made a public accusation. I made a statement about believing victims." He ended the call. My thumb moved toward Vanessa's name. I typed, "Tell Mark to remove it, and I'll agree to a private settlement meeting." The offer returned control to the person who had caused the damage. I deleted it and sent Mark's post to Margaret. At 12:40, Claire called from outside the community care organization where she had worked for 8 years. They suspended me. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed. Because of the lease? Because Vanessa's attorney sent the board a copy of the protective order request. They say, "My judgment may have endangered a woman who sought my help." Vanessa had turned the language of Claire's housing work against her. "Did you tell them the order hasn't been granted?" They know. They're reviewing whether I misused professional contacts to find the apartment. "Did you?" The pause answered first. "I asked a property manager from one of our housing programs whether she knew of a private rental. I didn't use client funds or put Vanessa ahead of anyone, but I used a relationship that came from work." "Why wasn't this in what you gave Margaret?" "Because I didn't think it mattered to the credit fraud. You don't get to decide alone what matters anymore." "I know." "Do you?" I stood and crossed to the window. "Send Margaret everything," I said. "The property manager's name, every message, all of it." "I already did." "Good. Good." Claire remained on the line. "There's more. Mark called me last night," she said. "He wanted to know whether Vanessa had ever told me she was afraid of you." "What did you say?" "That she used the word afraid twice. Both times were after I challenged her about lying." "And Mark heard what?" "That she used the word. Vanessa did not need people to invent facts. She only needed them to carry fragments to the next person." "Why did Mark know to call you?" "Your father gave him my number. My father had helped assemble the conversation that condemned me." Margaret called before Claire and I finished. "Do not speak to Mark again," she said. "His statement is attached to a supplemental filing. Vanessa submitted this morning. He posted it today. The filing was timestamped at 8:12. His post went live at 8:14. She had it before he published it. Or his statement was coordinated. Oh. Oh. Now. Oh." Margaret sent me the filing. Mark's words appeared as an exhibit beneath a heading. "Long-standing community concern regarding Ethan Mercer's controlling conduct." One friend had become a community. One post had become long-standing concern. At the bottom was an affidavit from my father confirming that I had historically assumed responsibility for resolving family conflict. The phrase was true. Vanessa's attorney translated it in the next paragraph as a lifelong need to control outcomes. I called my father. "Did you read what they attached your name to?" I answered questions honestly. "You gave them my childhood. I said you have always taken charge when people around you became emotional. You taught me to do that." He went quiet. "The company is bleeding," he said. "Clients are calling. Employees are frightened. So you helped Vanessa prove I was born guilty?" "I helped no one. I refused to lie for you." "Did you give Mark Claire's number?" He wanted clarity. "No." He wanted a sentence he could use. My father's voice hardened. "You are not the only person paying for this. I know. I signed away my shares to make payroll. You guaranteed them. Stop making sacrifice sound like innocence. That evening, Marcus brought a portable recorder to the room above the bookstore. Margaret had obtained voicemail data from Owen's business account. Most messages were routine. One had been deleted but recovered from the server. Vanessa's voice filled the small room. You told me the first signature would work. Now the lender has called twice, and Claire is asking questions. Fix it before Ethan sees the account. If he finds out early, the dinner won't work. Marcus stopped the recording. It connected the failed signature, secret account, Claire's suspicion, and planned dinner. Who knows we recovered this? I asked. Margaret, the forensic examiner, you, and me. Claire, she knows we were searching Owen's records. Not that we found this. Marcus created 2 encrypted copies. One went into Margaret's evidence system. He placed the other on a small black drive and sealed it in an envelope. Do not carry this around, he said. My phone lit up with Claire's name. She was breathing hard when I answered. Vanessa just came to my house. Are you inside? Yes. The door is locked. She left when I started recording. What did she want? The email thread and whatever Margaret recovered from Owen. Marcus was already signaling me to put the call on speaker, Claire continued. She said if I gave her every copy, she would withdraw the complaint against my employer. Did she threaten you? Not directly. She said people who help frightened wives shouldn't be surprised when their own motives get examined. Marcus wrote something on his legal pad. Send us your recording, he said. Claire's voice lowered. There's a problem. I told her she was too late because Margaret already had the voicemail. Marcus's pen stopped. You told her we had a voicemail? I was trying to make her leave. Claire had given Vanessa information we had deliberately contained. What exactly did Vanessa say? I asked. Claire played the recording from another device. Vanessa's voice was faint but recognizable. The voicemail proves nothing without the original. Claire replied, I never said which voicemail. A pause followed. Then Vanessa said, It doesn't matter. The copy is incomplete. Marcus reached for the phone. Play that again. Claire did. The copy is incomplete. Vanessa had not asked what message we found. She already knew the recovered version might be missing something. Did she say anything after that? Marcus asked. She told me to remember who had protected me when Ethan turned on me. Claire said my name. I'm sorry. I gave her too much. Send the recording to Margaret, I said. Then call the police and make a report. Not for me. For what happened at your house? Are you angry? Yes. We'll talk when you're safe. After the call ended, Marcus replayed Vanessa's sentence once more. The copy is incomplete. If she knows that, he said, then she knows what was removed. Can the original be recovered? Maybe. He opened Owen's access log. Someone had entered the voicemail account 14 minutes after Claire confronted Vanessa. The login came from the Mercer house. And the user was deleting messages? Vanessa deleted 11 messages before the forensic examiner locked Owen's account. 10 were recovered. The last had been a voicemail from Owen to Vanessa, recorded 6 weeks before our anniversary. Only the transcript remained. Margaret read it aloud in the conference room above the courthouse. If Mercer signs the statement, we use it with the petition and the lender. If he refuses, you say the refusal is part of the control. Either response works. Marcus placed the transcript beside the metadata showing that Vanessa had logged in from our house. She will argue that anyone could have used the network, he said. Then why agree to meet? I asked. Because the bank is preparing a criminal referral. Her attorney wants to know what will provide if the divorce and company disputes are resolved. Margaret closed the file. Today is not about humiliating her. We establish the timeline, protect the company, and correct the record. Do not use private material that has nothing to do with those goals. Another folder held messages about Owen's marriage, hotel photographs, and Vanessa's cruel jokes about people now defending her. Publishing them might make people abandon her, but it would also make me resemble the man she described. I left the folder sealed. The meeting took place at Mercer Design. 4 directors, my father, Mark, outside counsel, and 2 bank investigators attended. Claire sat beside Margaret, not me. Her written statement admitted every lie she had told for Vanessa and every professional boundary she had crossed. She would answer questions. Not speak for me. Vanessa entered with her attorney and took the chair opposite mine. Her gaze moved to the sealed folder. So this is the part where Ethan displays my private life to save his reputation. No, I said. That folder stays closed. The answer unsettled her more than a threat would have. Peter began the session. The board is reviewing Ethan Mercer's suspension, the unauthorized use of company information, and statements made to clients and employees. The parties have agreed that the relevant evidence may also be supplied to the bank and divorce counsel. Vanessa's attorney objected immediately to the voicemail transcript. There is no audio, no way to confirm tone, and no proof my client heard it. Marcus displayed the delivery record. The message remained unopened for 31 seconds, then was played twice, by someone using the account, an account your client accessed to delete it. Vanessa folded her hands. I logged in because Owen told me Ethan's lawyers were fabricating records. I was trying to understand what had been planted. Peter turned to me. Ethan, the board has heard descriptions of individual transactions. We need your account of the broader pattern. Everyone expected a defense. I began with an admission. I handled conflict badly. Vanessa's attorney stopped writing. I apologized to end arguments. I took responsibility before deciding what was mine. I kept financial systems in my head instead of documenting why decisions were made. When Vanessa said she felt controlled, I argued with details instead of asking why our marriage had reached a place where facts could no longer settle anything. Those were failures. They made me passive, difficult to know, and easy to misrepresent. They did not authorize anyone to forge my signature. Marcus placed the first credit application on the screen. I continued. Vanessa asked me to manage our bills 2 months after she and Owen began discussing how to portray that management as control. She described a fraud-related card freeze without the fraud alert. She prepared a confession for me to sign, then planned to use either my signature or my refusal as evidence. The timeline showed dates, requests, transactions, and consequences. Vanessa waited until I mentioned the apartment. I needed a safe place. Whatever Owen suggested does not change why I left. You were allowed to leave. That is exactly what controlling men say, that women need permission to go. You did not need my permission to leave. You needed my name to borrow money. Mark shifted near the wall. Vanessa turned toward him. You saw how Ethan behaved. You know how carefully I had to speak. Peter asked Mark whether his public statement had been coordinated. Mark cleared his throat. Vanessa's attorney sent me proposed wording. I changed part of it. Did you know it would be included in a court filing? Not before I signed. Vanessa's attorney leaned toward him. You were told it might support her request for protection. Mark rubbed both hands over his knees. I thought I was helping her feel believed. I didn't know my post was scheduled around the filing. My father was next. Did Ethan historically take responsibility for family conflict? Vanessa's attorney asked. Yes. Did he attempt to control outcomes? My father studied the table. I taught him that keeping the peace was his responsibility. Then I treated his habit of doing it as evidence against him. Vanessa's head turned. My father continued. He can be stubborn. He can make sacrifice feel like an argument nobody else is allowed to answer. But I saw no evidence that he forged, threatened, or deprived Vanessa of money, Claire answered last. She admitted obtaining the apartment through a work contact, lying about Vanessa's location, and withholding the email. Vanessa smiled faintly. And you expect us to believe your concern for Ethan wasn't romantic? Claire kept her hands flat on the table. My feelings are not evidence that you told the truth. They are evidence that you wanted my marriage. No. They are evidence that I stayed silent for selfish reasons. I am responsible for that. You are responsible for what you did with my silence. Claire stopped there without turning her testimony into a promise. Marcus played the recording from her doorstep. The voicemail proves nothing without the original. I never said which voicemail. It doesn't matter. The copy is incomplete. Vanessa's attorney asked for a break. Peter refused. Mrs. Mercer, how did you know the recovered copy was incomplete? Claire told me. Claire shook her head. I said they had a voicemail. You said Margaret had the copy. No, Claire replied. Vanessa's composure tightened around her. This is semantics. Marcus placed 2 transcripts on the screen. The recovered message ended after Vanessa said, if he finds out early, the dinner won't work. The provider's partial transcript contained 6 additional words. Delete this after you send the draft. Vanessa stared at the screen. I asked the question myself. What draft? Her attorney touched her sleeve. Vanessa pulled away. The copy doesn't prove who deleted the original? Nobody had accused her of deleting the original. Margaret's pen stopped. "Who gave you the full transcript?" Vanessa demanded. Owen said the archive was gone. Her attorney whispered her name. Vanessa looked toward the bank investigators instead of me. "He is still controlling this room." I placed the sealed folder in front of her attorney. "This contains material that would embarrass Vanessa, but does not prove the fraud. I am not submitting it. You expect credit for threatening me with it?" "No. I expect the record to show what I chose not to use." She laughed, but the sound arrived without control. "You always have to be the good man." "No. I made the mistake of thinking being easy to hurt made me good to love." I folded the unsigned confession once and placed it beside the sealed folder. "You didn't leave because I controlled your life. You rewrote mine so no one would ask what you did with it." Vanessa opened her mouth. "You can say you were unhappy. You can say I failed you. You can leave and tell people I was impossible to live with. But you do not get my signature beneath a story designed before I knew I was in it." Peter called the meeting to a close. The board restored my ownership access, but delayed my executive reinstatement. Mark agreed to publish a correction. My father withdrew his affidavit. None of it returned the clients, Claire's job, or the triumph. As the others left, Vanessa remained across the table. The unsigned confession lay between us. "What happens to me now?" she asked. It was the first question she had asked that did not tell me how to answer. "That belongs to what you did," I said. "Not to what I say about you." I left the paper where it was and walked out without asking anyone to follow. 4 months later, the brass apartment key still sat inside an evidence envelope. Margaret kept it in a locked cabinet with the forged applications, the unsigned confession, and the voicemail transcripts. The divorce was not final. The bank had referred Owen's conduct to federal investigators, but no one could tell me whether Vanessa would be charged or only held responsible for the debt. Truth moved more slowly after people stopped watching. The board restored my access to Mercer Design but appointed Peter as interim chief executive. I returned as design director, with an office on the second floor instead of the sixth. Some employees welcomed me back. Others became careful when I entered the break room. Mark published a correction. He did not call it an apology, and I did not call him. My father apologized once, in the finishing area, while both of us watched a cabinet door move through the drying rack. "I should have asked what happened before I asked you to make it easier." I accepted the sentence. I did not erase what came before it. Claire's employer completed its review and offered her a different position with no access to emergency housing placements. She declined. By then, her name had traveled through the professional community alongside Vanessa's complaint, even though the protective order request had been denied. She found contract work organizing records for a neighborhood legal clinic. We did not begin dating. For the first month, every conversation included Margaret or Marcus. During the second, Claire and I met twice for coffee in public places. She answered every question I asked, including the ones that embarrassed her. Sometimes I believed her. Sometimes the sight of her phone face down on a table made me wonder what else remained inside it. She never told me I should be over that. The room above the bookstore became less temporary, one object at a time. I bought a lamp, then a second plate, then a chair that did not fold when I leaned back. The wedding photograph remained in the drawer. One Saturday, my landlord asked whether I could repair the shelving in a small room behind the bookstore. The plaster had cracked, and 3 boards sagged in the middle. Claire arrived carrying coffee while I was measuring the wall. She set 1 cup near my toolbox. "No sugar," she said. "You remembered. I remember many things." That has not always made me trustworthy. She had learned not to turn ordinary kindness into proof of goodness. I took the coffee. We repaired the space over 6 weekends. Claire stripped old paint from the shelves. I replaced the warped boards. The bookstore owner offered it to the legal clinic for evening consultations. No one called it ours. Still, Claire kept a pair of work gloves in the bottom drawer, and I left a coffee mug beside hers. On the last evening, she found an old lock beneath the window. The mechanism stuck halfway, so I removed it, cleaned the pins, and fitted it to the door. When we finished, Claire placed a new brass key on the work table. The sound of metal against wood carried me back to the anniversary dinner. Vanessa's statement beneath my hand. My father's nod. Claire saying, "You promised." My chest tightened before I could remind it that this was another room and another key. Claire noticed. She did not slide it toward me. "The clinic needs someone to open on Tuesday nights," she said. "They asked if you wanted to volunteer. And the key? For the room, not my house, not a promise. You thought that needed explaining. I thought you deserved the choice without having to guess what I meant. The key remained between us. I wanted to make the moment cleaner than it was. I wanted to pick it up without hesitation and prove that Vanessa had not changed the meaning of every locked door. Instead, I left it there while we swept the floor. Claire did not touch it again. At closing time, we carried the tools into the bookstore. The owner thanked us and turned off the front lights. Claire waited beneath the awning while rain darkened the sidewalk. Crowded rooms still made me count the exits. A declined card still felt like accusation. When someone said, "Can we handle this privately?" my body prepared for a trap before my mind caught up. The truth had cleared my name in official records. It had not removed itself from my nerves. Claire opened her umbrella. "Coffee next Saturday?" It was the same question she had asked for 3 weeks. No pressure. No meaning I had to decode. Yes. She smiled and stepped into the rain. I returned to the small room alone. The brass key waited on the work table beside 2 coffee rings and a folded cloth stained with paint. I picked it up. The teeth were different from the apartment key. The weight was almost the same. For a moment, I could feel both objects in my hand, the one that had opened a life built around my absence, and the one that opened a room where nobody had asked me to surrender my version of events. I locked the door, then unlocked it again to make sure the repaired mechanism worked. Nothing dramatic happened. No confession, no promise. Only a clean turn inside a lock. I placed the key on my ring beside the one to the bookstore apartment. There was still an empty space where my office key had once hung. I left it empty. Not every loss needed to be replaced before I could go home. Some people do not destroy you by shouting. They do it by writing a version of you that everyone else can believe. And sometimes, the person who helps you survive is not the person who fixes your life. It is the person who finally says, "No, that is not what happened." If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments, have you ever had to fight for the truth of your own life? And if you want more stories like this, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.